Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a real detective story, solving the profound puzzle of how overwhelming experiences physically alter the human organism. For decades, the medical world just couldn't figure out why some folks couldn't, just get over terrible things that happened to them. Well, we're going to look closely at the evidence, map out the clues, and uncover the hidden biological mechanisms that literally keep human beings frozen in the past. Let's get right into it.
We're pulling our clues directly from Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's absolutely groundbreaking research on the brain, mind, and body, which he comprehensively laid out in his book, The Body Keeps the Score. Over a career spanning decades, Dr. van der Kolk and his colleagues have been at the forefront of a true revolution in psychiatry and neuroscience, because instead of just looking at outward behaviors, they figured out how to pop the hood, so to speak, and look at the engine underneath.
This powerful quote right from the prologue perfectly sets the stakes for us today. Trauma, by definition, is unbearable and intolerable. It's an experience that forces the mind to try and just shove it away. I mean, most people who go through a horrifying event desperately try to act like nothing happened just so they can move on with their lives. But as you'll see, it takes a tremendous, exhausting amount of energy to keep functioning while carrying around that memory of terror.
So, that brings us to the central mystery we're investigating. Why do some people remain trapped in the past? Long after a traumatic experience is actually over, it can be reactivated by the slightest hint of danger. But why? Why doesn't the brain just realize the threat is past? What is physically happening inside the body that makes these post-traumatic reactions feel so completely, utterly out of control?
Just to grasp the sheer scale of this mystery, take a look at this staggering statistic from the CDC. 1 in 5 Americans was sexually molested as a child. Let that sink in. 1 in 5. That tells us trauma isn't just something happening in distant war zones. It's everywhere. It's in our neighborhoods, our homes, our families. For every single soldier who serves in a war zone, there are 10 children endangered in their own homes. The scope of this is massive.
Section 1. The Mystery of Trauma. Let's start our investigation by looking at the early patients who first revealed the devastating physical imprint of traumatic stress. Meet Tom. He was a Vietnam veteran and a successful lawyer who came into a VA clinic back in the 1970s. Tom was suffering from severe flashbacks and terrifying nightmares about a specific ambush where his entire platoon was killed. But here's the wild part. When he was offered medication that actually stopped the nightmares, Tom refused to take it. He told his doctor that if the nightmares went away, he felt like he'd be abandoning his friends. He literally felt he needed to be a living memorial to his fallen comrades. His loyalty to the dead was keeping him from living his own life.
Around this same time, researchers started noticing how trauma completely reorganizes human perception. Take another veteran named Bill. When he was given a standard Rorschach ink blot test, he didn't see the abstract shapes or floating clouds or butterflies that most folks see. Instead, he hallucinated a dying baby from his time in Vietnam, complete with charred flesh and blood. This is a crucial clue. It brilliantly illustrates that traumatized people literally superimpose their past trauma onto their present reality. They lose that mental flexibility and imagination.
Section 2. The Limits of Medication. So, as doctors searched for solutions to these horrific flashbacks, the psychiatric community turned to a new suspect: brain chemistry. Tracking this chronologically, we move from the rather chaotic VA clinics of the 1970s, where doctors were honestly flying a bit blind, to 1980, when the formal diagnosis of PTSD was finally created. That milestone paved the way for the pharmacological revolution, marked by the 1988 release of Prozac, which eventually led us right into the incredible neuroscience imaging boom of the 1990s. Drugs like Prozac were heralded as absolute miracles when they first arrived, and for a lot of patients, these medications really did help them gain a sense of perspective. Raising serotonin levels made them less hyper-reactive to their environments. One of Dr. van der Kolk's own traumatized patients actually said the drug finally allowed her to stay in the present and take her kids skiing, instead of being entirely locked away in the pain of her past. But, and this is a big but, the crucial point here is that while medications brilliantly dampen those internal alarm bells and can be a vital lifeline, the strict brain disease model of psychiatry often misses the mark on root injuries. It overlooks our fundamental need to restore human relationships. It completely ignores the healing power of language, and honestly, it removes patient autonomy by telling them a pill will fix them, rather than empowering them to heal their own nervous systems. It's essentially masking symptoms without actually healing the organism.
Section 3. Inside the traumatized brain. To truly find the smoking gun in our detective story, scientists had to physically look inside the engine of the mind.
So, what does trauma actually look like in the brain? Well, with the advent of neuroimaging tech like PET scans and fMRIs in the 90s, scientists could finally ask and answer this revolutionary question. Instead of just making educated guesses based on a patient's behavior, we could literally watch the brain as it processed memories, sensations, and emotions in real time. It was a total game changer.
And the answer they found was profound. When researchers placed a woman named Marcia into a brain scanner, the results were undeniable. 13 years earlier, Marcia had been in a tragic car crash that killed her young daughter. While she was in the scanner, researchers played an audio script reminding her of the accident. Almost instantly, her heart raced, her blood pressure jumped. Her brain physically reacted as if that horrific crash was happening right at that very second, 13 years later.
Now, if you looked at her scan, there was this bright spot in the limbic area. That's the amygdala going into massive overdrive. Think of the amygdala as your brain's smoke detector. During a flashback, it sounds the alarm, pumping out massive amounts of stress hormones, like adrenaline, that send the entire body into a frantic physiological state of fight or fright. And it does this entirely bypassing the rational mind.
But here's another critical, fascinating discovery from that scan, involving Broca's area, which is a primary speech center in the brain. During Marcia's scan, Broca's area actually showed a significant decrease in activation. It basically went offline. This gives us visual, hard scientific proof that traumatized people literally lose the physical ability to articulate their horror. This is exactly why trauma is so often described as speechless terror. The brain's language center literally shuts down. Unbelievable, right? And this research proves something else. Incredible. Trauma deactivates the logical, sequential left brain, while simultaneously heavily activating the emotional, visual right brain. This essentially robs survivors of their executive functioning during a flashback. They can't organize what they're experiencing into a logical sequence of cause and effect. They just feel the raw terror, the sounds, the smells, and the physical sensations as intuitive truth in that exact moment.
Section 4. Reconnecting mind and body. Having discovered that trauma is a physical imprint that hijacks the brain's alarms and shuts down our logic centers, we really have to figure out how to rewire the system.
A big clue for this rewiring comes from studying learned helplessness. Researchers found that lab dogs subjected to inescapable shocks eventually just gave up. Even when the cage doors were opened and they could easily escape, they just lay there whimpering. Traumatized humans experience this exact same inescapable shock. They get trapped in a biological loop of fear, their fight or flight response gets completely thwarted, and they eventually collapse into a state of learned helplessness.
So for anyone supporting a survivor, this is absolutely the key takeaway. True recovery requires integrating 3 critical steps. We can use top-down talking therapies to process memories. We can definitely use medications to dampen those hyperactive alarms. But crucially, we must incorporate bottom-up approaches. Survivors need physical, visceral experiences. Think deep breathing, movement, touch that directly contradict their physical helplessness. We have to finally teach their bodies that the danger has passed.
Based on everything we've uncovered today, I want to leave you with this thought. Knowing that trauma literally rewires our brain's alarm systems and shuts down our speech centers, how do we shift our society's focus from simply numbing the pain with a pill to actually curing the physical scars of trauma? It's a massive question, but a vital one. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking those big questions.